Welcome back to the Alice Stewart Show, 7:06 here in Central Arkansas. We are into third week of the Obamacare rollout, and it is going less than stellar, many would say. There was a big hearing yesterday in Washington, D.C. with the contractors who were responsible for setting up healthcare.gov and rolling that out. And a lot of questions were asked. Some were answered, many were not, and GOP leaders in Washington are working to get to the bottom of what happened with the rollout of the Affordable Care Act. And here to comment on that and get his thoughts, I'm joined with Congressman Rick Crawford. Congressman, great to have you here.
Hey, good to be here. Thank you for having me.
I know there's a lot going on there in Washington on the heels of the government slim down and the debt ceiling increase. Now the spotlight is where it should have been on October 1st is the rollout of Obamacare. And I want to get your thoughts. There was a big hearing yesterday with the contractors who were responsible for building healthcare.gov and rolling it out, and a lot of finger pointing, and no one seemed to be wanting to take responsibility for the failure of this rollout.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. I mean, as you said, a lot of finger pointing going around, but nobody willing to step up and say this is, my baby. It happened on my watch. I'm going to take responsibility. And it's really kind of unfortunate that you don't have somebody in the administration that's willing to own up to this disastrous rollout. I mean, obviously it's terrible, and nobody wants to, acknowledge that it's so terrible. But we all know it. American people know it, and I really think somebody ought to step up and take responsibility.
And there were a couple of the issues that stood out with me in what I was able to see and read on this was the end-to-end testing, which is, I've done many websites, and we always make sure they're ready to go and the features work and the tabs are functional. And all of these people at this table, $600 million worth of federal contracts, they all said they did their individual end-to-end testing, but the comprehensive end-to-end testing was not done, and they pointed the finger at CMS and HHS. Yet we have not heard from Kathleen Sebelius, head of Health and Human Services. How important is it, Congressman, to hear from her?
Well, it's critical. I mean, she's the secretary of HHS. It's as I said, somebody in the administration needs to give an account of what happened, and to me, it seems like it makes total sense that particular individual whose purview is this law and this website rollout would be the one that would step up and take the questions. But she just doesn't seem to want to play ball at all.
And one of the other big factors in this, and they attribute some of the last minute, they still call them glitches, was the major decision. They say 2 weeks prior to the rollout on October 1st, the big decision, and they say by CMS, was to change dramatically the concept of healthcare.gov, and they would require registration prior to browsing, which means you have to go in there and provide all of your information, your documentation, private information. That has to be done. You have to register first, and then you can go into browse for different plans, which is opposite of what the president has said all along. You can go in and the marketplace and shop and compare. But the decision to change for registration first prior to browsing was done 2 weeks before this rollout, and that caused a big snag. And what are your thoughts on this? And they attribute this to CMS as well, but the decision to force folks to put in their information before they can shop.
Well, I mean, I think one can probably, draw the conclusion that there's an obvious reason why they want to get your information first and foremost. And it's like, why do the grocery stores put bread and milk at the back end of the store? Because they want you to, walk by and buy a few things on your way back to get the milk. There's marketing involved here and data mining, and they want to get as much information as possible before you actually see the product, because if you reject the product or you don't, at least they've got your information. And that's ultimately what this is about. And I think that ought to be cause for concern, that it sort of puts a little more of a political dynamic on things. And, I told a group of people a week or so ago, the American people are distrustful of their government, and I would say that's nothing new. Our country was founded on distrust of the government, and I would say to a certain degree, a level of that is healthy. What we've done now, though, is we've crossed the line from the inherent distrust that Americans have of their government, which is part of being an American, part of our republic, to the line that we're standing on now, which is fear of the government, and then anger, and anger becomes active. And this is sort of emblematic of this administration's disregard for the American people and how we feel about these things.
Well, and Congressman, what you just said is what one of the Democratic colleagues there, Representative Frank Pallone, said is the whole problem with all of this. He says that this is not about Obamacare and addressing the concerns of Obamacare. He says it's people like you, Republicans like you. You're just going around trying to scare everyone. Here's Congressman Pallone.
Once again, here we have my Republican colleagues trying to scare everybody.
Will the gentleman yield?
No, I will not yield to this monkey court or whatever this thing is.
This is not a monkey court.
Do whatever you want. I'm not yielding.
Here, and this is what's frustrating, is that there are legitimate issues out there, and the privacy concerns that you address, that they're not acknowledging to the American people that the information they input will be protected. There are serious concerns by the American people about this rollout, and as you address them, yet we have Democrats up there in Washington that continue to defend it and point the finger at conservatives like yourself and those who are trying to get to the bottom of it.
Well, here's the other thing. It's unfortunate that my colleague from New Jersey adopted the tone that he did, but we're seeing that more and more, is that they're in a defensive posture and they're looking to blame somebody, and who better to blame than the Republicans, who have been trying for the last 3 years to protect the American people from this disaster. Now we see what a disaster it is, and they don't even have the intellectual intelligence to acknowledge that they may have made a mistake. And that's unfortunate. That's what causes the fear out there, not us. We're not out there fear-mongering and telling people, oh, be afraid, be very, very afraid. No, they don't need us to tell them that. What they need is for someone to step up and tell them the truth about it. And the truth of the matter is, it was ill-conceived from the get-go. $1.3 trillion in new entitlement spending in the middle of a debt crisis makes absolutely no sense. And it really is unfortunate that we don't have willing partners on the other side who can honestly say, look, we missed the mark on this. We're not trying to disregard the fact that, we need to bring down costs of health care in this country. We need to do some things so more people have access and it's available to more people in a more cost-effective manner. But this was the wrong approach, and they just will not acknowledge the fact that they made a huge mistake, and the evidence of it is this crazy website that's not working for anybody.
Well, absolutely. And Congressman, you and the Republican leaders up there in D.C. and people across this country have been saying, let's delay this thing. Of course, the president delayed the implementation for the big business owners, but not for individuals. Republicans have been asking to delay, first to defund, but at least delay the individual mandate until the kinks can be worked out. This was even before the rollout. And it was not until now that this has become such a political liability. We see some Senate Democrats, like our own Senator Mark Pryor, have now stepped up to the plate and say, okay, we should delay this because there are some problems. Not until this has become a political liability for Democrats are some of them stepping up and saying, yes, we do need to delay this.
Well, unfortunately, that's the nature of this law, the Affordable Care Act, as unfortunately it's called because it's anything but affordable. But as it's become popularly known, Obamacare, and what you've seen is because it was a strictly partisan vote, not a single Republican vote to support this train wreck, it has become a political issue. And so it was absolutely imperative that they succeed with it as a way to say, see, we were right. Whether they were right or not is not the issue. They would have been more successful had they reached out across party lines and said, we need to do something. We're talking about a massive overhaul of 1/6 of our economy. We need broad consensus here. We don't need to drive this down a party line vote and then deal with it later. And so what you've seen is, for the last 3 years, is political theater as it applies to Obamacare, and what a complete mess it is. But what no one's talking about is the fact that we simply cannot afford it. It's insane to think that we can spend $1.3 trillion in new entitlement spending when Medicare is on the brink of bankruptcy, Social Security is on the brink of bankruptcy. We just crossed over the $17 trillion threshold in our national debt, and nobody's talking about what this is going to do to us with regard to debt and our entitlement spending. The president himself has acknowledged several times that the key drivers of our debt were Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, and yet is not willing to do a single thing about it. And then on top of that, let's go on ahead and add $1.3 trillion over the next 10 years. And I've had senior citizens ask, are we going to have to choose between Medicare, Social Security, and Obamacare? And that's a very valid, legitimate question from those seniors who are concerned that we're not going to be able to keep the promises we made to them.
Right. One last question on this before we go to break, Congressman, is obviously we've heard Senator Mark Pryor, who is up for re-election, Democrat in this red state we have here, joining many other Democrats running for re-election in their red states. Do you see him having a change of tune because he understands the liability of him embracing Obamacare leading into his re-election?
Well, and I certainly am not going to speculate on the motives of anybody who decides that maybe it's a good idea to delay Obamacare. I can definitely say that there's certainly been a political dynamic to this from the very beginning. As I indicated, it was a partisan vote from the very start. So there's certainly a political dynamic, but I don't want to impugn anyone's motives. Senator Manchin from West Virginia has been very willing before any of this happened that maybe we should consider at least the individual mandate, because we gave relief to the employers through the employer mandate delay, which the president did through executive order, which may be not even legal. I really don't think that he has the authority to do that, picking and choosing not only what laws that he's going to enforce, but what parts of what law he's going to enforce. So, certainly there's a political dynamic to the entire law. Whether or not folks have finally realized maybe it's politically expedient for me to go on ahead and jump on the bandwagon calling for at least a delay, I don't know. That's for them to answer. But the entire law is, from my perspective, is politically motivated.
No, without a doubt. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then I want to come back with Congressman Rick Crawford to talk about the new issue that is front and center in Washington is immigration, and also the decision by your colleague, Congressman Tim Griffin, not to seek re-election. So we'll have more with Congressman Crawford right after this on The Alice Stewart Show.
The Alice Stewart Show on 96.5 The Voice.